All right, so welcome back. So our goal is to try to improve our UI, try to make it something that looks a little bit better on the landscape mode. Before I get into trying to make it a little better, I will say that if you would like, you don't have to fix landscape. Another way you can fix the problem is just like this. So says, what devices do we support? We support portrait, landscape left, and landscape right. If I simply uncheck these two things and then I ran it again, so here it's an iPhone 6 Plus upright. You can see that there's a ton of screen real estate. And if I rotate this way, what happens is it looks kind of funny on the simulator, but the device just doesn't rotate, right? And so that's one of the nice things about those boxes is you could just choose to not support landscape. We actually, just because it works out well for our purposes, we're going to choose to support landscape left and landscape right. The simulator is a little slow there, but you can see that there it switches over. So you can see that with a 6 Plus, it's actually wider, so we actually could still fit a view down here. But if I were to run this on the 4, heck, I'll do it. So here's the 4, and then this is what we saw before. Once you rotated, there's really not enough quality room down here. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to compact our UI a little bit. And you know the way we're going to do it is we're going to get rid of these labels, and we're going to make our sliders actually be the color, and then we can make it a little bit more compact. So go ahead and go into your storyboard, and let's see if we can make some of these things happen. The first thing I want to do is I want to actually set the tint on these guys correctly. So I'm going to open up my property inspector on the right here. I'm going to select on one of these guys, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to figure out what do I need to change that color. And so if you're in the 4th tab over for the properties attributes, you should be able to scroll down. You should eventually just find that color, right? And so I mean we're just going to change it. So it's not tricky here. So you can see that it's the tint. Tint is something that's used on various buttons and controls. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make the top one be a red color. We're going to make the second one be a green color. If you want to, you can select from the colors here, or you can click on Other. And once you're in Other, if you wanted to be really official about it, you could like make it perfectly green if you wanted to do that. And then on the blue here, actually I think that blue looks fine. And then on the alpha, to be honest, I just want to use some gray color, so I'll just use like a dark gray here, and I think that'll look pretty good. So now I've got those as the individual colors, and now what I want to do is I actually just want to kill these labels, and then I want to smash these sliders up next to the values. You notice that we've made enough changes here that my UI, if I go to a preview inspector, it's going to be terrible. What I'm going to actually do is I'm just going to highlight the whole view. I'm going to click on this Resolve Layout Issues button, and it's hard to see here, but I'm going to go to the All Views section and just say Clear Constraints. And what that's going to do is it's just going to give me a fresh slate of constraints. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to line up this slider to actually stop whenever it gets to this value. And then this value I'm just going to kind of stack below the other value. Actually, I should use the sliders to stack because they're a little bit bigger. And what I want to do is I just kind of want to get it to look about right, and then I'm going to go through and add my constraints. So I'm going to make it nice and compact, and so there I've got it looking about right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to add my constraints. Another way you can add constraints is I really do like the pen option, is you can actually right-click drag. So if I right-click drag on this guy, and I drag like onto this view, it'll give me ways to make relationships between them. So like one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to set the top space to this slider, and then from like this slider to that slider, I wanted to set the vertical spacing, and then from this one to that one, I wanted to set vertical spacing. From this one to that one, I wanted to set vertical spacing. That trick is really handy whenever you want to do things that are more complex. To be honest, everything I'm doing here, I could have used the old pen approach, right? So I could go from like him to the next one over. And what I want to do is I want to establish a horizontal spacing between those two guys. This guy, I want a trailing space. And then I actually want a relationship to this guy where it's got centered Y. So that's how I'm going to establish the height on these guys. So each of these guys is going to have a center Y to the slider that's next to it. Depending on where you put your views, if you didn't get it exactly lined up in center Y, it's going to yell at you that the two are slightly off. So that's one thing that you have to do. You also need to establish things like widths and trying to figure out, what all is necessary to make this thing look the way that I want it to do. And I mean, I can go through this with you, but I kind of want you to try to figure some of it out, right? So I mean, I'd like for you to do what you can to figure it out. One trick that you'll find as you're kind of going through and figuring it out is there's a little red arrow here. If I click on this red arrow, that's telling me what's wrong. So it's complaining that it doesn't have an X position for this slider. It doesn't have an X position for this slider. And kind of as you're going through and adding these things, you can see these errors start to go away. So I mean, these X positions, these are easy. That's just the leading space. And then this guy is going to also need a leading space. And I think that some of these things are easier to do with the pen button. I just kind of wanted to show you different ways to do it. That guy needs a rule for his X, so I can fix him. So I'm just going to add a trailing space for him. So I just kind of went through and fixed a couple things. Now it's only yelling at me about the width of these bottom sliders. There's a couple ways that you could fix this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to say that it's got the equal width as the one above it. An equal width is a trick that you'll use quite a bit. So that's an equal width there, and then that's an equal width there. I just added an equal width for each one to the one above it. And you can see that all of my issues went away once I finished adding these things. More likely what's going to happen to you is there'll be a couple warnings. So I'm just going to go ahead and cause a warning here. So if I just kind of had him at a different spot than where the constraint would say, is it would tell me that it's misplaced. This is an exclamation point, an orange warning, not a red, not yet defined. It's just telling me that it's in the wrong spot. And the easiest way to fix these is just to click on them and then decide what do you want to do. And so your options are you can update the frame, which would just move it. You can update the constraint to match where it's currently at. That's a completely different option. Reset to suggested, which basically means undo everything you've done. And then apply to all views. This is nice if you've got like 30 errors. You can just check this box. I only have one. I want to update the frame. So I'm just going to say fix misplacement. And then you can see that it snaps it right into where I want there. You can check to see if you're successful by looking at your portrait view, and you can see that we do in fact have a nice gap here below, and then our other views should also continue to look fine. So I think we're actually in pretty good shape there. Other little tricks just to kind of tell them about you. You can also do a lot with just accepting their advice, right? So usually their advice is pretty good. It's not always pretty good, but there's a button down here for resolve. And you could always click on add missing constraints and it'll just try to guess constraints for you. That's kind of a hacky way to do it. You should really understand it to the point where you never need that button. But if it's easy and you just want it to add a bunch of constraints for you and it'll probably guess fine, then fire away. Only other thing we need to add here is I would like to add a view to the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for UI view. Typically, I type just like the word and I leave off the UI, but there's so many views that I'm going to add the word UI to the view here. Drag it over, and then what I'd like to do on this guy is I'd like to make him take up all the remaining space. So I'm just going to kind of slide him into about the right position, and then I'm going to start adding constraints. Obviously, I could add constraints in a number of ways. I could do it with the right-click drag. I'm going to go back to my pen just because that's easy, and I want to pen left, right, top, and bottom, and I want to add those 4 constraints. And what you can do is you can actually check in your previews that you've got a nice little swab of color there, and then a giant swab of color on some other views. So at that point, I think these things look pretty good. You'll notice that the initial value of this color here, I'm not going to set it because I'm going to do that programmatically. But we are all set. If you want to prove it to yourself, you can run it. And then we'll come back next time to go and connect some of these things to our code. See you then.